Okay, so this is how to put together the 4x4 display piece. The kit will have 32 of these headers, one board, and then I highly recommend that you 3D print the header helper for this. It also works as a stand. And then you'll primarily get the USB-C connector because it's a better connector within this over the micro USB, but there is a micro USB slot. You have an Ethernet jack on the back. Then you have 8 orange LEDs with 850 ohm resistors. And you get a package that's marked 10 microfarad of 4 microfarad capacitors. The clear one is 222 microfarad capacitors. You have 2 Schmidt diodes packages that deals with the clock, and then you have 2 voltage regulators within it, and then primarily shipped with 100K resistors. There's also 200K depending on how fast you want your clock. This is 100K goes for 1 hertz and 200K is for half hertz. So we'll do the 1 hertz one right now. And then all you need are some tweezers and a soldering iron and some good solder. There's no cutting within this set. If you do install the USB-C before you do your headers, the header helper will not go through all the way. And then the end product with mini badges will look like this. And this is with both of the connectors. If you do both, you have to use a jumper. But you can only use one power source at a time, or else you'll cause issues. And this board doesn't have the 5.1K pull down resistors on the control pins of the USB-C, so USB-C to C cables will not work on this board unless you modify and do the hack to add those resistors. And that is everything that goes on this. I do like to start with the USB connectors. I'm not going to do the micro USB in this video. It'll be installed the same. I did enlarge the pads. You only have to do 2 pads on the micro and then do the connections. It's the same process to go through. Like always, when I start, I like to my tip. Within this connector, I like to add just a little bit of solder on these pads there. Just a little bit onto these pads. So I just tinned the pads. I'm going to put the USB-C connector on. The USB-C connector is very sturdy. Which is really nice. Sits on really well. And this does have some shield guards. I like to this solder in. Keep it in place. Careful not to burn yourself. Once it's in place, it makes soldering those pins a lot easier. And when you pre-tinned, let's see. Pre-tinned lines should make it really simple. To solder on. And the large pads should help as well. Just inspect to make sure that you have it soldered. It's pretty good. Like it's on the USB-C. And then you just want to tag in those supports at the bottom. That's your only part on the top. And now you want to put in all your little headers. This will take a little sec as we get in all of these. If you've ever done mini badges before, these headers can be such a pain to keep in place as you solder them in. That's why I developed the header helper. To help you go through and solder all this together. You grab your little helper here. You line it up, that first set, and as you keep it slightly angled up, you just slide it through so it goes through. And then I like to hold it on the far side, have it go down, and it keeps all your headers in line. Now all you have to do here is, at the bare minimum, you need to tag the 2 headers on each spot. And on the bottom, the 4 on the left side for all the applicable data lines for this board. I like to just go through and tag all the headers to lock them in place. This will take a little bit of time. Don't need to spend much time on each one. Just a little tiny Hershey Kiss peaks as we go through. I can zoom in a little bit on the area here. Nice to have a solder sucker. The fume extractor. Help keep the fumes down. Probably the longest section as you solder. or doing all these headers. Even if all you're doing are the minimum amount. I just recommend doing the minimum amount to begin with, and then go through and finish soldering them together. Afterwards. The future versions of this board will only have USB-C, and we'll have the pull down resistors as well. That will just add in two more resistors by the USB-C connector. Over here we'll have two resistors, one on each side. That'll be done in. Just go through, get these all done. We're halfway done now. So around the edge here, there's optional LEDs I'll be doing on. Those are those orange ones. They kind of add a nice little ambient flare to the board. When complete, the clock circuits are up here, and the power converters are down there. I go from the 5 volts to the 3.3. Finish up this quickly. Just about done. You can also drag solder these. If you have a drag soldering iron or the K-tip, does make it go a little bit faster. But you have to drag solder before you install the parts. I recommend that you solder this one that's right by the Ethernet jack fully up first. Once that jack's there, it becomes a little bit harder to solder this one, these two. This is my pine saw with my modified LED light ring. That I have. Okay. Once you have that done, so this is that jumper that you can plate if you need to use micro USB and do that. I recommend going through, just choosing one of these pads and just add a little bit of solder on each one. We'll do all the essential parts first. I like to do one of these. Was it two on the small IC there? That one, my small ones. Let's go through. Let's do these first. Let's do these are the Schmidt diodes that work for the clock circuit. I'm going to open these up carefully. You don't want to lose them. Come down on your mat here. Since I'm right-handed, I like to move my board so the pin that I'm trying to solder to, I put that solder on. It's close to me. I like to put the chip on. Grab it. And solder in place. I did enlarge these pads to make it easier to solder on. And then to the other side. Make sure that's on good. Rotate around. Nice thing with these longer pads, makes it easier to solder. So you just start on the far side, get some solder in there, and drag through. And if you can see that, it makes it nice and good. This helper makes a nice little stand to keep everything flat as well as you're going through and soldering. And then let's do the other one. These are the hardest two pieces of this board. I try to make it easier for even the intermediate and beginners by enlarging that pad. Okay. Nice. Easy. And then same thing. Also like the high flex solder. Makes it really easy to use and work. So there we go. And since we're onto these, those resistors, either the ones marked 200K or the non-marked ones, which are 100K. If you want to buy extras, I believe these are 0603 size. You can calculate and choose the frequency that you want your clock. I like the 1 hertz, the 1 second flashes. I think most of the clock mini badges look really good at that frequency. The half hertz is also pretty nice. So just choose what you like of the two. And with these, like all the other SMDs, you do that one side, you slide it in, you position it. You solder it on, and then you're good. That goes on R2 and R1 are these resistors. The Schmidt diodes were U1 and U111. Don't have to be quite perfect as long as they're touching. And then once you get those on, you can touch up the other side. Make sure they're connected. Okay. Now we can do this, which is marked 10 microfarads. In fact, they're the smaller set. Kind of looks like resistors, but these are capacitors. These go on C21, C22, C9, and C13. These don't have any polarity or orientation, so it makes these really simple to install. These are also in the 0603 size. Nice and simple to just solder these all on. All that you're looking for is a nice little curve up the side of the capacitors. And then you can go through and just touch up the original side if you need to. Most of these are pretty good. Okay. And now let's get into the 22 microfarad. These are C14 and C10. So these capacitors with the other one, with the LDOs, help convert the five volts to the 3.3. These are nice and simple. These are bigger. These are 0805 parts. Go on nice and simple. Okay, now you want to take your LDOs. Let's do these. We're getting close to being done now. Only a few parts left. So you want to go through and just grab and solder this right on. You want to just tag these both on. Good. Make sure you can see this. And once you have them tagged, just make sure you clean your tip, make sure they're shiny. And you just want to put on solder just to cover those pads. Sometimes this tag a little bit more on those original pins depending on how much solder you originally started with. Okay. That gets through all of that. Now we want to take our RJ45 cable jack. This one's nice and big, simple. As you can tell, pretty large. You want to position it so it's on those pads and kind of centered on the back there. Okay. Once it's tagged, you want to just tag each of the pins. This uses pins 1 and 2 for the SD lines. I believe SD2 is pin 2. And then the other SD is pin 1. And then 7 and 8 are your power. And 2 and 4 are your ground, vice versa. Can't quite remember off the top of my head. Just want to make sure that's on there. As you look, so 7 and 8 are ground, and then 4 and 5 are your power at 5 volts. And then 3 and 6 are not connected. So that looks pretty good. At this point, it is a fully working. We can get a battery pack, plug it in, and find, I like to use a clocked mini badge. The tack in the box is great. We can test so that this board is cut in half. So the first two are 1 power and 1 clock, and then the other one's the other. So if you want to do 2 different clocks, you can. So I recommend this testing 1 of each side. And my power supply, without it fully loaded, will cut off. So that's one side, and then the other side. The clocks are the same. That means everything's put together correctly to this point. At this point, you do have a fully working board. It'll work great. But now let's move on to the nice little optional LEDs. These go on the clocks. Each one, 4 of them are done on this side's clock. So this clock circuit controls these 4 LEDs, and then this clock circuit here controls these 4. And they alternate oppositely. On high and low, they'll alternate going on and off. And these are your resistors and LEDs for that. Are right here, these 8s. So let's quickly just go through and tin the tip. And we just want to tag one side of each of the sets of pads. So this is D1 through D8, and then R2 through R10. I like to type these, so the pads are always going to be over on my right. Since I'm right-handed, if you're left-handed, I recommend you doing the opposite and doing it on the left. And then, like always, to open these, you take your tweezers on the side, pop open, and then slide off that plastic. And the LEDs are the same. This on the side, open up. Try not to lose them. These are larger parts, which are nice. And I like to make sure all the resistors are black side on top for easy grabbing. Let's do all the resistors first. Sure, the boards in. So we're just tagging all these on. Quite a few. Just rotate the board as you go. Just trying to position them. Right in between. So you don't forget. Go through on the other side. And this solder all those resistors into place. Don't need a lot of solder, just needs to make sure they go up onto it. Okay. Now with these LEDs, you have to look at the boxes, and then on the LED there's a little green side that always goes to ground. And if you flip them over, it will point towards the ground. So that means it will point into the box. So you want to align them so the green part goes into the box. So with this one, I need to make sure that I'm soldering the non-green side. To that connection. Takes some practice, but once you can read, notice the difference on the LED. It makes it really easy to install. You can go pretty fast. Try not to heat them up too much, or else they will burn. So you just want to be able to slide them into place. Okay. For the most part, I put all these the same. I think I have one that's oriented differently. Okay. And watch D8, as it is different than all the other ones where the box is to the right and not to the left. And that they're all to the left. Once you get them in, go through in this solder on the other side. If in doubt, you can power on the board and test LEDs to make sure they light up. It's an easy way of testing this if you have installed them right. And how close you got to the pads makes it easier or harder. Solder on. I think I only have the last two. Let's solder these on. Okay. Once that's done, get back your battery pack, plug it in, and if it's done, you can see the blinking lights like that. Okay. So that Ethernet port, I haven't quite tested. There you go. And if you have two, you can take an Ethernet cable and connect them in the back, and it gives power to the new badge. As you can tell, it's lighting up. And if I throw a mini badge in this one, it's lighting up. So that's one way that you can cascade your boards, is by using the Ethernet jack. And you can get creative and make boxes or do anything else with them. And that is how to assemble and put together and test your 4x4 board. So this is Rushan. Andrew, hope you enjoyed the guide. Enjoy. And then afterwards, use the stand. The header helper as a stand to put on your desk. Do what you want. Thanks.